Hello, this is Rob with Tech. So today we're gonna go over the process of backing up and restoring openmediavault. This is the test VM that we have for this. Now, I just want to quickly show you on my services. For Docker, I do have a whole bunch of Docker containers running. And I guess to give you an example, we can just test this one out. We go to 10.0.0.49, but it's HTTPS. You see that this is Docker is working from within this installation. So first thing that we're gonna do, we're gonna go into system, and then we're gonna go into plugins. We're gonna search for the backup plugin. We're gonna install this. Right, then we should get on system. You should see the backup. So the other thing that we need to do is we gotta go to storage. Now the best way to store the backup is you want to store it on a external hard drive on a USB. You don't want to store it on like a RAID. If you have an MD Atom RAID or you have a ZFS pool, you don't want to do that because it's gonna complicate the restore process. I'm not saying it cannot be done. I'm just saying that it's gonna complicate it. So in this case, if we go to disks, you can see that I have two disks. So the SDA one, the 20 gigabyte disk, this is gonna be my OS drive. That's where openmediavault is installed. Now this is my 32 gig drive. I mean, this is just like a data drive. That's where I would essentially be storing stuff. So here's when I want to make my backups on this 32 gigabyte drive. So now we're gonna go to shared folders. We have to create a shared folder for the backup where we want to store the backups. This is the folder that I already have configured. I'm gonna call this OMV backup. Now file system, remember I'm gonna go on the data drive. This is the drive that is you're not using for your OS. Now I'm gonna leave this like that. I usually like to do read write for users. Now also for the access, I go in here, make sure that root is the owner and users. Okay, so now we set up our folder for this. Now we go to dashboard, system, backup, and then you go to settings. Here you have to select the backup folder. So here I'm just gonna select the OMV backup folder. Now there's multiple methods here, and you can just read up on this online on the wiki, OpenMedia wiki. But basically, use the DD method. This is gonna be it's gonna take all the whole hard drive. You have a 256 gigabyte hard drive. It's gonna take the whole hard drive and it's gonna compress it. So the file is gonna be relatively small when it's compressed. And I don't really recommend this unless you have the space, because you have to extract that file, and that file will extract to the size of the hard drive. And then you have to clone that or DD that into a media. And if you do DD for this, it's the same thing but without the compression. Oh, actually, no. DD is the one for the OS partition, and then DD full is what I was describing. So in this example, we're gonna use fsarchiver because this is data aware and only backs up what you need. So I haven't tested the Borg backup in the rsync. I use rsync to sync files, but not with this plugin. So I'm gonna change this to fsarchiver. Now you don't have to really mess with this, and this is how many days you want your backups to stay. So let's say you want monthly backups. You want, I don't know, 10 backups in 1 month. So you would do 31 days, right? So after 31 days, your last backup, because so it goes based on the time that the file was created, or the backup file was created. Now this, I'm just gonna leave it at 7, but basically this is the only thing you need here. Well, to schedule this, you gotta go to schedule, and here you can set up the timing. So if you remember the previous option, the 31 days, if you do 31 days and you put a weekly backup, that means that you have 4 backups before they start overriding. If you do a backup 2 times a week, well, then you'll have 8 backups before it starts overriding. After it goes the last file goes over the 31 days. Now, I'm not gonna set the cron for this example. I'm just gonna go into settings. I'm gonna do a manual backup. Now, while this finishes, it's gonna take a little while. We're gonna be using the system restore utility. This is what we're gonna boot into. It's just a live Linux distro that has some of the tools that we need to do the restore. So you just go into systemrestore.org, and then here on download, you just download this. I already have this downloaded, so I'm not gonna download it. The other guide that we're gonna be using will be here in openmediavault. This person has a guide that basically the same thing that I'm doing is I'm following this guide here. So after we do the fsarchiver, this is the files that we are expecting, and then here is the restore process. So the only difference between my video to this, I guess, if you have a EUFI system, you need to restore the EFI partition. I think that's what's it called. Yes, so if you have a UEFI system, you gotta restore that UEFI partition. So it's basically, it's right here on how you're gonna do it. You have to extract the file and then do the DD. But in this example, this openmediavault is just using BIOS or MBR. So we're just gonna skip the restore the UEFI partition. So the only thing that we're gonna be doing is we're gonna restore the partition table, and then we're also gonna restore the system partition. Now I'm gonna pause the video right here because this takes a little while. Okay, so it just finished. So it says that the size on the original file system is 18 gigs and it's using 13 gigs. It's not really using 13 gigs, it's just the space used on that data hard drive. But basically, the important thing is here 18.58. So we go back and we go into dashboard, we look at file systems. You can see the SDA, this is the boot drive, is using 18.58 gigabytes. So that's how it's using. Now, if we show you the backups, I'm gonna go to storage, shared folders, and then I'm just gonna copy this here. I SSH into the system already. So in here, this is the system that we're working on. I'm just gonna copy again because I guess it got lost. So CD, right click. Now we do an ls. Let's move into that folder. Do an ls-l h so we can get a human readable. And you see that the total backup from the 18 gigs that we have on the OS drive, we're only taking 5.2 gigs. If this was, since this is a VM and it has a 20 gig, if you would have used the DD option, the file would have been the 20 gigs if there was no compression. But the thing is, like I was saying, if you do the compression, you have to extract it to write it to media or to another hard drive. So basically, this is pretty much done. We have all the files that we need. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut down the system. Now this is a VM, like I was saying. So what I'm gonna do once it turns off, I'm gonna remove the hard drive. So the one that is, this one's the important one. So I'm gonna detach and I'm gonna delete. Oh, I have a snapshot. So let me delete that. Okay, so now we'll go back to hardware. This disk we're gonna remove. So now we completely broke the openmediavault instance that we have here. Now remember, I didn't remove the 32 gigabyte because this is the data drive. Now if we go to console and we try to start this, now it's not gonna start. While that loads, it's just gonna stay like that. And this one, you're gonna see that it no longer works because now just to prove that this was running on this local instance of openmediavault, so nothing's gonna load. So what we're gonna do at this case, so we're gonna go ahead and shut it down again, and I'm gonna introduce the system, what's it called, the system rescue. So going here to hardware, I'm gonna boot into that. So use this local system rescue. Now console, So I'm just gonna enter. Okay, so here really up to you. You can do start X and that'll give you a GUI, but I'm not gonna do that. I don't need the GUI. So we're gonna do, let me clear the screen. I'm doing LSBLK. So it's gonna show us our hard drives. Oh, you know what? I did not add our replacement hard drive. So let me do that. Okay, there. So I'm gonna add a new hard drive. This is gonna be the 20 gigabyte. This is where we're gonna do the restore to. Now we're gonna do a start again. Okay, now we should have the disk. So LSBK. So we're gonna see that we have SDB1. This is the 32. This is our data partition. This is like the external hard drives that we have. And then we got SDA. And you can see that there's no partitions on there. So what you're gonna do is first you're gonna mount where you have the backup files. So the backup files in this case, they're in this SDB1. If you have them on a network share, so you're gonna have to mount the network share. This is where it gets complicated if you have the backups in a RAID, because you have to assemble the RAID or do a ZFS import. So I highly advise to just have a separate, like a USB or something where you can have those files. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a new directory, and then we're gonna do MNT and then backup. Then we're gonna mount that SDB1. That's where our backups are. So mount dev SDB1, and then we want to mount that on. You can always do tab. So MNT tab, and then like B for backup, then tab. Now we're gonna CD to that directory. So now we do an ls-l. You're gonna see that we have the OMV backup there. So CD OMV backup. I'm gonna do tab. Now in here we have all the files. Let me clear again. Now the first thing that we need to do is we need to restore the partition table. If you remember when we did the ls block or the LSBLK, we have SDA, it doesn't have any partition. So after we restore the partition table, or the grub and the restores and the partition table, will have some partitions. So to do that is we have to do dd if for input file equals, then here we have to give it the grub parts. So I'm just gonna do B for backup because we're gonna use grub parts here. So you can just do tab and it's gonna autocomplete because it has the same name almost. And then you're just gonna do grub, then P tab, so that's the file. Then you need to specify an output file. So output or OF equals /dev, and this is SDA. This is the hard drive that you want to restore on, which is this SDA right here. Now we have to give it the size BS 512. That should be very fast. Now we do another ls block or LSBLK. You're gonna see that now in SDA we have SDA1 and we have SDA2. Now SDA1, this is our root partition. SDA2, this is our swap partition. We're not gonna restore swap because we don't have a backup file. We need to recreate that, but I'll show you that in the next steps. But what we're gonna do is now we're gonna restore the root backup into this SDA1. The root backup is the biggest one here, which is this FSA file. What are you gonna do for that one? You're gonna do fsarchiver, and then you're gonna do rest fs. Now you're gonna give it the file. So again, do B, then tab, then fs. That's the file there. Then you're gonna do ID equals 0. So the reason this is 0 is because in the fsarchiver you can set up, you can back up multiple partitions in one file. So 0 will be the first partition. This is the only one here, so we're just gonna do ID 0. So it selects the first one. then comma dst for destination equals dev sda1. So this is the biggest partition that we have, sda1 right here. Now this might take a little while, depends on how fast your system is. Well, let me cancel that. I forgot to do the -v so we can see the progress. So I'm gonna pause the video here. I'll come back because it'll take a little while. Alright, so it looks like the backup finished. The other thing you have to do is you just have to restart. Now I know for a fact that this will not work in my case because we need to reinstall the grub, but I'm gonna reboot it anyways. Because you might encounter this issue, so I'll include it in the video. Well, I guess let me remove the disk here. So if you're running Proxmox, of course, this is not going to be the case for you if you're doing this on a physical system. But I need to go ahead and allow the hard drive. So this is the 21 that we just reimaged right now. And I guess I can move this to the top so it can boot first rather than the disk. And I guess for this example, I'm just going to go ahead and remove the disk because I want to show you that it's not going to work. It's gonna get stuck there and it's not gonna do anything. You're supposed to get that blue screen for the Debian blue screen. So to save some time, I'm just gonna go ahead and kill it again. And I'm gonna go to hardware. I'm gonna add again booting to that system. The system rescue disk. Well, I should change the order. Okay, there. You should go into the disk, the system rescue. All right, so now what we're gonna do is to rebuild the grub. We need to here's the screen. Let's do an LSBK. So we see that the 20 gigabyte drive is the SDA and the SDA1 is the root partition. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna mount dev SDA1. This is gonna be the root partition. And what you're really mounting is you wanna be able to access the boot partition. So we're gonna mount this, the root partition, and we're gonna mount it under /MNT. Now, if you do a ls-l and then you go into MNT and then you go to boot, you see that it loads files. You see that? So then if you see files here, that means that you have the right directory. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do a grub -install and then --boot -directory equals and then that path mount boot. That's going to be the boot directory, and then you're also going to have to specify the disk, which is dev SDA without the number. And then that's going to install the grub. Perfect. Now it's going to work. So if we shut down, we spelled the shutdown. We're going to go back to hardware so we can remove the disk. We're not going to need the disk anymore. So I'm going to do console. So you see how you have the blue screen now because we installed the grub. Now this is gonna work. The first time that you boot is gonna take a long time, and that's because we restored the partition table, but we need to recreate the swap file or the swap partition. Well, this partition is created, but it's a different UID, and I guess that's what's causing the issue. And then we're also gonna take care of this message, the MD atom no array found. So I'll let that load. Like I said, it'll take a little while. Okay, so it finally loaded. So I had a static IP address on this, which is 10.0.0.40. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna SSH to it. And the reason I'm doing that is just because it's easier to control or to copy text from the screen. So here it is. So I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna clear. If we do a LSBK, we're gonna see both drives again. But now you see that it got, in this case, how it booted, it did SDA1. This is the other hard drive. The one that we need to do or to create the swap partition is gonna be on SDB. And so it's very important to check this because sometimes it will be mounted. It depends how the system interprets the disk in the beginning. So the swap partition that we need to enable is this SDB2, which is the 977 megabytes. Now to do that, we're just gonna do a make swap, and then we're gonna do dev SDB2 because it was that's the swap partition. Now it's gonna give you a UID, which is right here, so we'll just highlight it. I like to use PuTTY for the SSH connection. Now you're just gonna do Vim or VI or Nano. I think Nano looks better. ETCFS tab, and then in here you're gonna find the swap. You see how you have swap here? So you're gonna remove this UID. And you're gonna input the new one. So UID equals, you right click. Then to save this, you're gonna do a Control O. Then you're gonna do enter. And then you're gonna do Control X. Now what we need to do is we need to update dash in it ramfs dash u. Okay, now we're gonna do update grub. And then we're gonna do swap on dash s. Now we can just reboot. Now I'm gonna reboot. I'm gonna close the screen. We're gonna go back to here to the console, and you should see that the system has restored. It shouldn't give us any more errors or anything. Okay, so it looks like we're still getting that MD Atom message. So it looks like I ran the command for the update init ramfs and the wrong order. So we'll fix that in a little bit. Okay, so I'm just gonna log in real quick. And I'm just gonna do the update init ramfs again. I misspelled it. Right now I'm just gonna update the grub again. Now it should work. Okay, now to show you that it actually is working, so you can do the IP address for the system. You can see that I have all the configuration. So we go to storage, shared folders. My folders are there. We go to services, here in compose files. You're gonna see that I have all the Docker containers running. And I guess if I check this IP address, which is the one for the Nextcloud, you can see that it's all working out. So that's how you back up and restore OpenMediavault. If you guys have any questions, make sure you drop it down in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you.